I'm sure you don't know that much about beer. Beer has never tasted, never touched your lips, especially my underage students in here, right? Now, I'm not going to have you write all of this down. I'll be honest with you. I know a lot about wine. I don't know so much about beer, so I put these down for myself, these notes, but you don't have to write all this down. This is far too much, okay? But you will say, Professor Smith, you had a cute story about wine, you have a cute story about beer, and I would say yes. Anybody watch the History Channel? I love the History Channel. And every couple of months, I'm always flipping through, and I'll see this guy on there, and he's really interesting. He's a anthropologist, and he talks about how man went from being basically a caveman type of society. What type of society are we today? We're information society. Before that, we were manufacturing. Before that, we were agricultural. And before that, what were we? What was the first society? Hunter-gatherers. Excellent. Hunters and gatherers. Meaning our great ancestors used to just roam the earth, and they never put roots down. They would, if they were hungry and they saw a buffalo over there, they would go and hunt the buffalo, and they would follow the buffalo. And then when the apples bloomed in the apple region, they would go there. And so they were always moving around. They never set roots down, which is not conducive to building a civilization. And he says that early man discovered beer, how to make beer. And he realized that if he wanted to continue to make beer, he had to figure out how to grow all the ingredients together in the same place at once. And so, in theory, beer is what turned us from a hunter-gatherer society, which is pretty primitive, to a civilized society of agrarian or agricultural. So if you're drinking beer and someone's looking down their nose at you for drinking beer, you can always tell them, hey, I'm advancing civilization by drinking beer, right? It's a cute story. Okay. But again, you know, when you start to look at the ingredients that you need to make beer, you can't be a hunter-gatherer society because you have to learn how to grow them all together. So the first thing we talk about, beer is the world's oldest and most popular alcoholic beverage. Okay? Even predates wine is what the historians say. It's produced by the fermentation of sugars derived from starch-based material. It's different from wine. What's wine derived from? Fruits. Beer is derived from starch-based material. Fruit gives you wine, starch gives you beer. The most common being malted barley. Malted barley is to beer as in grapes are to wine, right? You can make wine out of other things, but the majority of wine is made from grapes, so the majority of beer is made from malted barley. However, you can use wheat, corn, and rice. They're also widely used, usually in conjunction with the barley. Rice wine. People call it rice wine. Not really wine. It's really a type of beer. It's a hybrid because it's made from rice. Rice, fruit, or starch? Starch, right? Okay, so once again, if you really like beer, we have a beer class here. And beer is as complex to us as wine is. Beer gets kind of a bad rap because you think of it's okay, well, it's, you know, for the common man, it's not that sophisticated. Wrong. Beer is just as complex as wine is. And if you go to Belgium, I mean, oh my goodness, I mean, that's kind of ground central for beer, and they have all kinds of different beers made of different things, and they take it very seriously. The other thing, you know, the reason that beer is one of the first and most popular beverages is that people used to drink beer not to get drunk, but why did they choose beer over, say, water? Yes.
Wouldn't the water go bad faster than beer?
Absolutely. What's in beer that kind of keeps it, bacteria and bad things in check? Alcohol. Right? When you sterilize something, what do you sterilize it with? Alcohol. So beer, back in the day, was a really interesting choice, or a good choice, because you got the liquid, and it was a small chance of something being bad or growing bad in there, as opposed to water, because the alcohol theoretically is going to kill it. And then a lot of beer, you still had barley and starches kept in the beer, and you would drink the beer and eat the starches at the bottom. And so you got kind of a, you got your beverage, and then you got your food. Okay? Now, beer is composed mostly of water. Water is used to make beer, nearly always comes from a local source. Does the water affect the taste of the beer? Who's from New York? Who's got the best bagels in the world? New York. Why are New York bagels the best bagels in the world?
Water.
No, you have to say water.
I'm not from New York.
Say water.
I'm from upstate, so does Eric.
Yeah.
That's how.
Water.
No.
It's the water.
Pennsylvania, or Philly.
Yeah. Okay. It's how they say water. It's the water, right? I mean, it's true. New York bagels are the best in the world. And I think probably the water has something to do with it. It gives it a unique taste. You can go anywhere in the world and taste the water, and it all has a distinct taste to it. Okay? Then we talked about malt, the ground barley. Okay? This is starch source in the beer, provides the fermentable material in a beer, and is a key determinant in the character of the beer. Okay. Water, malt, which is really your activation starch. And you make beer just like you make wine. You put it all in together and you allow it to ferment. The fermentation gives it the alcohol content. Now, drinking beer. Who are my beer drinkers? Who likes beer? Just, okay. What's typically the natural alcohol content in beer?
4.5.
5, a little less than 5%.
What, like light beer?
Well, light beer, yeah.
Light beer. What about regular beer?
Mid 4s.
It's higher than that, isn't it?
6, 7.
Light beer would be like 4.5, but an IPA would be around 7, so I guess
Okay.
a normal would be like 5, 5.5.
Yeah. Usually you're in that 5 to 7% range, and it's interesting. Why doesn't it produce more alcohol? Why can't you get it naturally higher alcohol in beer? Just ferment it longer. You should get more alcohol, right? Well, what happens, and why you can't get more alcohol naturally, is that the alcohol kills the yeast, which is used to ferment the beer, which is to turn into alcohol. Does that make sense to you? It kills the thing that makes alcohol. Alcohol kills the thing that makes itself. So you can only get a certain percentage of natural alcohol in a beer. Now, are there things you can do to up that? There are tons of things you can do. But natural beer really doesn't produce that much alcohol, because the alcohol it does produce kills the fermenting agent. Now, they have this stuff called super yeast, which I'm kind of scared of anytime you got any type of super thing. I mean, yeast is basically, a bacteria? Where am I? You don't want to make things, bacteria, super, okay? But you can get higher content. There's also malt liquor, where you can distill higher degrees of alcohol, okay? So we got the water, we got the barley, or the malt, which is barley. And then the last, we talked about the yeast. don't write all that down. Yeast, we know about yeast, fermenting agent. And then the last one is really interesting. Has anybody ever had beer that did not include hops in it? It's actually very sweet. If you don't put hops in beer, it's very sweet. Hops are what gives beer that unique, some people call it bitter flavor. You add hops for flavoring. Hops come from the flower of the hop vine. And it's also a preserving agent. That's why they put hops in there originally, is to help preserve the beer. But it also gives it, bless you, gives you a very, very unique taste. And again, is what I would describe as bitterness. And again, it's, when we talked the other day, we talked about why wine is complex and why people like it. It's that contrasting sweet, the red wines is sweet, and the bitterness. It's really the same thing with beer. Beer without hops is actually sweet. But when you add the hops in there, it's the bitterness, and it's that contrasting flavor of bitterness and sweet that just set your taste buds on a skyrocket ride. And that's why beer is cool. It's very complex. I'm not a beer drinker myself. It just never really appealed to me. But I every now and then I like, maybe 4 times a year I like a nice cold beer, especially if I've been working in the yard or something like that. And beer also, man, I tell you what, one of our favorite restaurants is a German restaurant. And, the Germans and their beer, right? And it complements the sausage dish and the sauerkraut and all those really meaty type of dishes, and beer goes with it very well. It complements it. So beer gets kind of a bad rap, in that it's kind of the common man's wine, but it's just as sophisticated and unique as wine is. Okay? Now, most of us will drink what's known as lager. Okay? Lager's the first brewed in Germany about 500 years ago. And it's interesting, the Germans loved their beer. And what was happening